I am joined by my colleague in banter, Matt Bellany. Hello, Matt.
Hi there.
So Netflix hit 200 million, the magic number. I mean, a magic number, although it really didn't land with such a bang because everybody is now used to Netflix being so dominant. The pandemic certainly has helped with that, but that is a big number. And they are now telling us that they made so much money. They have between 15 and $16 billion in debt, but they say they're not going to borrow money anymore because they're making enough money to not only survive and make crazy amounts of new programming, but even to start chipping away at that debt. So that is a good day for Netflix.
Yeah, and that's the big takeaway. I mean, the 200 million was sort of a foregone conclusion, but from the beginning, a lot of commentators, including on this show, we have questioned the debt problem at Netflix, where they've funded this astronomical run up in content and subscribers by borrowing money to produce the shows and the movies. And the question was, will the money run out or the debt come due before they are able to be financially autonomous? And now they're claiming that they're going to be by next year. It's going to be neutral this year, and they're going to start paying back the debt next year. And if that happens, that is a fantastic marker for the long-term viability of the Netflix business.
Yeah, right now the only thing that's in the universe of maybe becoming a competitor is Disney Plus. Reed Hastings, the co-CEO of Netflix, said he is very much looking forward to competing, and maybe he said we're very fired up about catching them in family animation. I'll believe that one when I see it. That's a tough
Good
one.
luck.
Yeah, but otherwise, the competitors are lagging. And it's not going to be easy. We have seen a report from Deloitte talking about churn. Churn is a real disease that the streamers face because, in the past, it was seen as people were willing to pay for 3 streamers. Then it ticked up to 5, possibly because of the pandemic or because of the advent of all this new competition. But there is a point where people say, you know what? I saw the thing I signed up to see and bye, I'm out now.
Yeah, this study suggested that 46% of people had canceled a streaming service over the past 6 months. That's a gigantic number. That's almost half of users. And if you think about it, I mean, that is the long-term threat to this business of streaming content, because if people are going to jump around and surf to their favorite services to see a particular show and then cancel right after, you're going to have a hard time amassing the kinds of subscriber numbers that Netflix has. And if you're Netflix, of sustaining that number. And it's just become so much easier to cancel a subscription service these days than it was in the days where you had cable or satellite and there was a box. You had to have a guy come to the house. I mean, these days it's a couple clicks and you're done. And there is a real problem here. If the value proposition isn't there long term, then you're going to see people opt out. And that's why I think you're seeing these services lean into not just advertising one show. They're now looking at, like in the case of HBO Max, where they put out a trailer for their entire 2021 movie slate, which is all the Warner Brothers movies. They're trying to tell you, no, it's not just Wonder Woman. We have movies coming every couple weeks that you're going to want to see. And Disney did a whole presentation for investors and fans where they laid out movie after show after movie into 3, 4, 5 years down the road, because they want that value proposition to be there for people, so it's not just The Mandalorian and then cancel.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I think people keep Netflix at this point. It's just become so fundamental. I think that's the last one that gets canceled, which, they had the field to themselves for a long time. They built their brand, and congratulations to them. And in terms of Warner Brothers, I will note, yes, they are offering those movies. It would be very interesting to see the churn out after people watch Wonder Woman. There's a lot of good stuff on that site, a lot. But still would be interesting to see. And we have talked in terms of movies being things that are less sticky in the past, less sticky to viewers, less engaging. I meant that more emotionally. I don't have any science to back it up. That was just a feeling that I had. But in the context of this study and this issue, the throwing of movies at the streamer seems to me to be a riskier proposition. And you don't get to keep people around as much if they're not engaged over a series of nights or weeks, as is the case with Mandalorian, which they don't just drop all at once. So we're going to have to see the evolving strategies.
Well, or you're Netflix and you put it out there that you're going to have 70 original movies on the service in 2021. I mean, that is pretty impressive. And maybe most of them are garbage. You know, the Netflix movies
I was
haven't
going to
really
say,
been up
yes.
to the theatrical level typically. But if you're hitting that many hits, you're going to get some home runs, or at least triples or doubles.
Yeah, but I feel like if I don't know what it is and it's brand new to me every single time, that is just less engagement. And I will also note that Warner's can't promise you that all those movies will be on their streamer because they didn't have deals with their partners, and they have made some deals. Denzel Washington is said to have gotten a staggering payday for The Little Things, which they painted themselves into the corner on by announcing that it would be on the streaming service day and date with its opening in theaters that are closed. You know, that's acknowledged, but they didn't make a deal. So they paid him as if that movie was going to be a giant hit. Denzel Washington doesn't play when it comes to this stuff. You know, his rate is his rate, 20 million per movie and my back end. And they paid him a lot of huge tens of millions of dollars, I'm told. So there are other movies. They don't have a deal with Legendary yet for the Denis Villeneuve movie Dune. They are still fighting over the James Wan movie, as far as I know, which they don't own. I mean, I heard Lana Wachowski is very opposed to the day and date for the next Matrix film. So we'll see. But still, you know, this is the strategy, and this is the gaping maw of the demand for originals. It was a frustration going back, Matt, that Netflix wanted to advertise the service more than the shows, but now only more so.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get worse. I mean, we're seeing the new Paramount streaming service launch in March. They just announced that release date, and they're going to have something splashy on that service when announced. There's some speculation they might put the Top Gun sequel directly onto Paramount Plus or Day and Date. That would surprise me, just given Tom Cruise and his love of theaters. But this is only going to become more and more competitive, and the churn issue is going to haunt these streaming services, you know, forever, because there's no going back. The customers are used to the ability to cancel, and they're not going to, unless we see a mass bundling of all these services where you got to keep them all. And there could be that down the line. But for now, they've got to each justify themselves every month to all their consumers, and it's going to be difficult.
I will note just still, I think a lot of the studios will hold the line. And there's a lot of talk that Disney will put Black Widow on the streamer. But I am told it's because there's a tease. If that happens, that means if they don't get Black Widow out, they will mess up the release for the future Marvel mega movies that they do want in theaters. So still picking and choosing. And yes, I too would be surprised if Top Gun ends up on the streamer, but I wouldn't rule it out. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
That's Matt Bellany, former editorial director of The Hollywood Reporter.